The Eight Consciousnesses is a classification developed in the tradition of the Yogācāra school of Buddhism. They enumerate the five senses, supplemented by the mind, the obscuration of the mind, manas, and finally the fundamental storehouse consciousness, which is the basis of the other seven. This article contains Tibetan script. Without proper rendering support, you may see question marks, boxes, or other symbols instead of Tibetan characters. This article contains Chinese text. Without proper rendering support, you may see question marks, boxes, or other symbols instead of Chinese characters. The Eightfold Network of Primary Consciousnesses. All surviving schools of Buddhist thought accept, in common, the existence of the first six primary consciousnesses: Sanskrit, Vijñāna, Tibetan, Wylie, rnam-shes. The internally coherent Yogācāra school associated with Maitreya, Asaṅga, and Vasubandhu, however, uniquely, or uncommonly, also posits the existence of two additional primary consciousnesses, kliṣṭamanas and ālayavijñāna, in order to explain the workings of karma. The first six of these primary consciousnesses comprise the five sensory faculties together with mental consciousness, which is counted as the sixth. According to Gareth Sparham, the ālaya-vijñāna doctrine arose on the Indian subcontinent about 1,000 years before Tsong. It gained its place in a distinctly Yogācāra system over a period of some 300 years stretching from 100 to 400 CE, culminating in the Mahāsagraha, a short text by Asaṅga, circa 350, setting out a systematic presentation of the ālaya-vijñāna doctrine developed over the previous centuries. It is the doctrine found in this text in particular that Tsong and his Ocean of Eloquence treats as having been revealed in toto by the Buddha, and transmitted to suffering humanity through the Yogācāra founding saints, Tibetan Rolbud, Maitreya Asaṅga, and Vasubandhu. While some noteworthy modern scholars of the Gelug tradition, which was originally founded by Tsongkhapa's reforms to Atisha's Kadam school, assert that the ālayavijñāna is posited only in the Suttamitra philosophical tenet system, all non-Gelug schools of Tibetan Buddhism maintain that the ālayavijñāna is accepted by the various Madhyamaka schools, as well. The Yogācāra Eightfold Network of Primary Consciousnesses, Avijñāna in Sanskrit, from compounding eight, with Vijñāna, primary consciousness or Tibetan, Wylie, rnam-shes, is roughly sketched out in the following table. The Eightfold Network of Primary Consciousnesses subgroups name, of consciousness, associated non-static phenomena, in terms of three circles of action: English, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese physical form, type of cognition, cognitive sensor, sixth. Each of these six common consciousnesses, referred to in Sanskrit as pravti-vijñāna, are posited on the basis of valid straightforward cognition, on any individual practitioner's part, of sensory data input experienced solely by means of their bodily sense faculties. The derivation of this particular dual classification schema for these first six, so-called common consciousnesses has its origins in the first four Nikayas of the Sutta Pitaka, the second division of the Tipitaka in the Pali Canon, as first committed to writing during the Theravada school's fourth council at Sri Lanka in 83 BCE. Both individually and collectively, these first six, so-called common consciousnesses are posited, in common, by all surviving Buddhist tenet systems. Origins and development. Pali Canon. The first five sense consciousnesses along with the sixth consciousness, are identified in the Sutta Pitaka, especially the Salayatana Vagga subsection of the Samyutta Nikaya. Monks, I will teach you the all. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak. As you say, Lord, the monks responded. The Blessed One said, what is the all? Simply the iron forms, ears, and sounds, nose, and aromas, tongue, and flavors, body, and tactile sensations, intellect and ideas. This, monks, is called the all. Anyone who would say, repudiating this all, I will describe another, if questioned on what exactly might be the grounds for his statement, would be unable to explain, and furthermore, would be put to grief. Why? Because it lies beyond range. Yogācāra. The Yogācāra school gives a detailed explanation of the workings of the mind and the way it constructs the reality we experience. It is meant to be an explanation of experience, rather than a system of ontology. Vasubandhu is considered to be the systematizer of Yogācāra thought. Vasubandhu used the concept of the six consciousnesses, on which he elaborated in the Trikaic treatise in 30 stanzas. Consciousness. According to the traditional interpretation, Vasubandhu states that there are 8 consciousnesses. 5 sense consciousnesses: mind, perception; manas, self-consciousness; storehouse consciousness. According to Kalupahana, this classification of 8 consciousnesses is based on a misunderstanding of Vasubandhu's Triyakakrit by later adherents. Ālayavijñāna. The ālayavijñāna forms the base consciousness in ālayavijñāna, or causal consciousness. According to the traditional interpretation, the other 7 consciousnesses are evolving or transforming consciousnesses originating in this base consciousness. The storehouse consciousness accumulates all potential energy for the mental, nama, and physical, rupa, manifestation of one's existence, nama-rupa. It is the storehouse consciousness which induces transmigration or rebirth, causing the origination of a new existence. Rebirth and purification. The storehouse consciousness receives impressions from all functions of the other consciousnesses, and retains them as potential energy, bija or seeds, for their further manifestations and activities. Since it serves as the container for all experiential impressions, it is also called the seed consciousness or container consciousness. According to Yogācāra teachings, the seeds stored in the store consciousness of sentient beings are not pure be. The store consciousness, while being originally immaculate in itself, contains a mysterious mixture of purity and defilement, good and evil. Because of this mixture, the transformation of consciousness from defilement to purity can take place and awakening is possible. Through the process of purification, the Dharma practitioner can become an arahant, when the 4 defilements of the mental functions, c. of the manas consciousness are purified, de. Tathagata thought. According to the Lankavatara Sutra and the schools of Chan/Zen Buddhism, the ālayavijñāna is identical with the Tathagata f, and is fundamentally pure. The equation of ālayavijñāna and Tathagata was contested. It was seen as something akin to the Hindu notions of Atman, permanent, invariant self, and Prakti, primordial substrative nature from which all mental, emotional and physical things evolve. The critique led by the end of the 8th century to the rise of teleological epistemic tradition, of Yogācāra, and a hybrid school that combined basic Yogācāra doctrines with Tathagata thought. The logico-epistemological wing, in part sidestepped the critique by using the term siddhasantana, mind stream, instead of ālayavijñāna, for what amounted to roughly the same idea. It was easier to deny that a stream represented a reified self. On the other hand, the Tathagata hybrid school was no stranger to the charge of smuggling notions of selfhood into its doctrines, since, for example, it explicitly defined the Tathagata as permanent, pleasurable, self, and pure, nitya, sukha, tman, uddha. Many Tathagata texts, in fact, argue for the acceptance of selfhood, tman, as a sign of higher accomplishment. The hybrid school attempted to conflate Tathagata with the ālayavijñāna. Transformations of consciousness. The traditional interpretation of the 8 consciousnesses may be discarded on the ground of a reinterpretation of Vasubandhu's works. According to scholar Roger I. Jackson, a fundamental unconstructed awareness, ālayavijñāna, is described, frequently in Yogācāra literature, Vasubandhu's work. According to Kalupahana, instead of positing additional consciousnesses, the Triyakakrit describes the transformations of this consciousness. Taking vipaka, manana and vijñāpti as 3 different kinds of functions, rather than characteristics, and understanding vijñāna itself as a function, vijñānati vijñānam, Vasubandhu seems to be avoiding any form of substantialist thinking in relation to consciousness. These transformations are threefold. Whatever, indeed, is the variety of ideas of self and element that prevails, it occurs in the transformation of consciousness. Such transformation is threefold, namely, the first transformation results in the ālaya. The resultant, what is called mentation, as well as the concept of the object. Herein, the consciousness called ālaya, with all its seeds, is the resultant. The ālayavijñāna therefore is not an 8th consciousness, but the resultant of the transformation of consciousness. Instead of being a completely distinct category, ālayavijñāna merely represents the normal flow of the stream of consciousness uninterrupted by the appearance of reflective self-awareness. It is no more than the unbroken stream of consciousness called the life process by the Buddha. It is the cognitive process, containing both emotive and conative aspects of human experience, but without the enlarged egoistic emotions and dogmatic graspings characteristic of the next two transformations. The second transformation is jnana, self-consciousness or self-view, self-confusion, self-esteem and self-love. According to the Lankavatara and later interpreters, it is the seventh consciousness. It is thinking about the various perceptions occurring in the stream of consciousness. The alaya is defiled by this self-interest. It can be purified by adopting a non-substantialist, anatman, perspective and thereby allowing the alaya part, that is attachment, to dissipate, leaving consciousness or the function of being intact. The third transformation is visaya-vijñāti, the concept of the object. In this transformation the concept of objects is created. By creating these concepts human beings become susceptible to grasping after the object. Vasubandhu is critical of the third transformation, not because it relates to the conception of an object, but because it generates grasping after a real object sadartha, even when it is no more than a conception, vijñāti, that combines experience and reflection. A similar perspective is given by Wylie. According to Wylie, all the elements of the Yogācāra Storehouse consciousness are already found in the plea canon. He writes that the three layers of the mind, citta, manas, and vijñāna, as presented by Asaṅga are also mentioned in the plea canon. Thus we can see that vijñāna represents the simple reaction or response of the sense organs, when they come in contact with external objects. This is the uppermost or superficial aspect or layer of the vijñāna skandha. Manas represents the aspect of its mental functioning, thinking, reasoning, conceiving ideas, etc. Citta, which is here called ālayavijñāna, represents the deepest, finest, and subtlest aspect or layer of the aggregate of consciousness. It contains all the traces or impressions of the past actions and all good and bad future possibilities. Understanding in Buddhist tradition. China. Ālayavijñāna and Huyen. Although Vasubandhu had postulated numerous ālayavijñānas, a separate one for each individual person in the Parakalpita, this multiplicity was later eliminated in the Ālayavijñāna and Huyen metaphysics. These schools inculcated instead the doctrine of a single universal and eternal ālayavijñāna. This exalted statement of the ālayavijñāna is described in the Ālayavijñāna as primordial unity. The presentation of the three natures by Vasubandhu is consistent with the Neoplatonist views of Plotinus and his universal one, mind, and soul. Chan. A core teaching of Chan/Zen Buddhism describes the transformation of the 8 consciousnesses into the 4 wisdoms, G. In this teaching, Buddhist practice is to turn the light of awareness around, from misconceptions regarding the nature of reality as being external, to directly see one's own nature. Thus the 8th consciousness is transformed into the great perfect mirror wisdom, the 7th consciousness into the equality, universal nature, wisdom, the 6th consciousness into the profound observing wisdom, and 1st to 5th consciousnesses into the all-performing, perfection of action, wisdom. Korea. The interpenetration, and essence function, of one Hyo, is described in the treatise on awakening Mahina faith, AMF. The author of the AMF was deeply concerned with the question of the respective origins of ignorance and enlightenment. If enlightenment is originally existent, how do we become submerged in ignorance? If ignorance is originally existent, how is it possible to overcome it? And finally, at the most basic level of mind, the alaya consciousness, is there originally purity or taint? The AMF dealt with these questions in a systematic and thorough fashion, working through the Yogācāra concept of the alaya consciousness. The technical term used in the AMF, which functions as a metaphorical synonym for interpenetration, is permeation or perfumation, referring to the fact that defilement perfumets suchness, and suchness perfumets defilement, depending on the current condition of the mind. Depending on the current condition of the mind. Depending